Hello, my name is Antoine Samaha. We are talking about the FOC framework. We're going to see today in our sample application how to create a lookup. A lookup is nothing but a normal entity. Okay, it's just like any other entity, but we are calling it lookup because it's the list of values used in other tables. Like for example, here in our case. Okay, like for example, the employee role. This is the example that we're going to talk about. It's the employee role. You know, we have a list of employees in our sample application. We have a list of employees and a list of employee, and it will have a role. So this is the entity. This is the entity that will contain the list of roles to be selected in an employee. So like any other entity, it extends the POJO FOC object, and the annotation says FOC entity. Look at this here. The annotation here is to add some predefined fields. The name, we have some predefined. What are predefined fields? You know already that we can add fields in the entity. Let me reopen the employee entity itself. Usually we add the fields like this. We say the type of the field in the annotation on top by saying it's a string, FOC string. And here is the name, the constant that gives the name of the field. Okay, this is how we usually do for normal fields, for general purpose fields. Now we have some predefined fields like the name. Deprecated. Let me explain deprecated and order. Deprecated, for example, it's a Boolean field that allows you, whenever you say that an item is deprecated, it means that you don't want to see it in the lists anymore. You don't want to be able to select it in the future. But since you have past data that is already using this row, let's say the role designer, okay? Let's say that we have a role designer in our company, and that at a certain point we decided to not to have a designer in the company, to call for an outside designer, for freelancers and designers. So we don't want to use this role in the company anymore. So I don't want to see it in the drop down when I'm defining a new. Maybe I decided to change the name. Simply, I decided not to use designer, but to use artist, something like that. In this case, I want to flag this item to be non-selectable anymore. This is the role of this Boolean field deprecated. Now, obviously, I could have added the field deprecated here as a FOC Boolean. Yeah, I can do that. And then use it, filter it out here and there. The advantage of having this predefined field is that automatically FOC will filter the items out and will not show them in the drop down. So all the management of a usual deprecated item will be done automatically by FOC. So this is the usage of this predefined field deprecated. Another field is the order. Like many times in our drop downs, in our lookups, the requirement is that we see them in a certain order. Like for example, the option other, when the option does not exist in the drop down, you usually add something like other or custom or whatever. So the option other, usually they ask for it at the bottom so that the user would have read all the other options. You know? And some of the options are more common, so they want them to be on top, or maybe a clear succession because they have a logical succession that is not reflected by the alphabetical sorting. So usually many times in the drop down, they ask us, the business people would require a certain order. This field is an integer field that gives the order of the item. And this field is automatically managed by Fog in all the areas while we are inserting, when we drag and drop to sort them, and when we display them in the output. So this also is, to me, to Fog framework, is a predefined field. You just need to say, I want the order field. I want the deprecated field. The name also, I'm saying I want a name field, and I'm changing the size because the default size, I forgot, it's maybe 20, the default size. So I'm changing the size to 100 for flexibility. And that's it. These are 3 fields in the table of employee role. And as usual, we will decide to have the same name for the class and the table. The constant of the table name here is also employee role as the class is. And since it's the same name, I don't have to specify the table name here. I don't have to say here the real table name, because the real table name is the same as the class name. So all is good. We have added here a field called type. So recently in our project, now this is not mandatory for someone doing a drop down, a lookup field, but we find it very convenient to have constants, to have a field string also giving a constant value in English of what this drop down value is. Like if I have a role engineer, I would call the name engineer, and I will have a type saying engineer also, because maybe the user would want to change how you write engineer. Maybe they want to write electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and they are both engineers. So they are both of type engineer, and maybe for a particular type, I want to show particular fields and hide some others. So to allow all this flexibility, it's good to have an isolation between the title that is appearing everywhere, which is the name, and a string inside that will indicate development for development purposes and to build conditions on, or maybe some analysis also on. It would be good to aggregate for all engineers. If I have electrical, mechanical, whatever, it can be useful. This thing is not mandatory. We have decided to have something like this in our application, and I'm showing you this in this example. Look at this field type. I like this field type. It says Fog multiple choice string. Okay, what does multiple choice string mean? Multiple choice without string means that in the employee I have that, I think. In the employee I have that in the status. The multiple choice without string. It's inside in the database, it's an integer, and it's storing 0, 1, 2 according to this title. It shows this title in the dropdown. It shows employee probation disabled. But when you store, when you click save, you will save 0, 1, 2. Okay. Now, employee a multiple choice string is the same thing, but we are really storing. So you'll see a drop down. You will see the titles. Here are the types. Yet you will store a string. Okay, you will store engineer, support, sales, financial officer. What's so cool about it is that you can still allow new values too. So if you want to, you have a drop down, it has a autocomplete. But if you want to type something new, you can. And once you type something new, it becomes part of the list that we will show it to you next time. So this is good if you want to restrain the number, if you want to keep it open to the user to type something. Okay, to give like the role, if I don't have the list of the role of the employees, I don't have it predefined. And I want to give to the end user the possibility while creating an employee to type automatically the role. And yet, I don't want to have the word engineer written in 6 different ways. So I want an autocomplete feature that will show the user how a previous person have written engineer. So as you start writing you would see that the list has been restricted and it's showing you the option engineer, and you can select it without so it reduces, if you want, the risk of having different typos for the same name or the same option. Anyway, so these are our fields. I have created my entity here, and it is so it's a normal entity, we agree, and it is available in my list in my package. This is the package as we saw in previous videos. This package will be scanned by FOC because this module says here, it's saying, guys, please scan this package for entities, and these entities are required by this module. Okay, so this is my package. It will be scanned. The employee role will be scanned and detected as an entity. So FOC will know in its memory that this entity exists. But until now, nothing will be created in the database. Let me check if did I run this before? I'm not sure. I'm going to check now with you. If I go public tables, okay, employee, so something. Employee role, yes, it is there. Okay. Look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna drop this table. Okay. Drop, delete. Delete, no, yes. We want to delete, yeah. Okay, I don't have this employee table anymore, okay? We talked before about the automatic adapt data model. So if I created a new database table, what I would want ideally is that anybody working with this software, I want them to automatically get this adapt data model done automatically for them without them having to go and click. Because if I run it now, I will have errors saying, the employee role table does not exist, and I will have to run the adapt data model manually. I don't want to do that. I want to tell the module that it needs to do an upgrade. I incremented the version ID. Okay? So this, if I run now, it will adapt data model and create the table for me. But this is not all. This is not just that. I want to do other things also. I want to first mark the version number. It is very important because I want automatically to auto-populate the table with new values. But I'm going to do that programmatically. Okay? So to do that automatically, I'm going to mark the version from which I need to do the auto-populate. Meaning that I'm going to name it employee role auto-populate. Okay? The version was 1001. So from 1002, we start auto-populating. Yani, what I mean is that if I'm installing this software, a new version, and the database is at 800, and I'm installing, the system will say, oops, 800 is less than 1002. So the real version now in the database does not know what employee role means and doesn't have the table auto-populated. So the software will know that it needs to auto-populate. If they install this version and they come, the database becomes 1002, And then 1 week later, I'm installing at the same client, I'm installing a version 1050. A year later, they are going from 1050 to 1056. In this case, they are not jumping over the 1002. They already have the 1002. They already have installed the role, and they already have the list in the database. I don't want to do the auto-populate for people who have already passed this version. So this is really a red line where I'm drawing this red line of 1002 to say, whoever is crossing this red line, please let me know so I can create the database, I can fill the table for you. Okay. Now, how do we do this? How do we do this? I want to fill it with a few options. So to fill it with a few options, I'm gonna go first and detect the initial version. How to detect the initial version? Here I'm gonna say before. You know this in Eclipse, you write the method and you write control space. It is completing it before adapt data model. It's an override because there is a method called before adapt data model in the super class. So it is proposing to autocomplete with the super and everything. Great. And I also need another one, the after adapt data model. Okay, I'll explain what these two methods are. I like to put them on the bottom, and so this is why I moved them. I wonder why Eclipse didn't put them with the right indentation directly, but that's fine. Oh, because I have, okay, fine. So whenever you launch the adapt data model, Fog will go and call every module and will notify the module. Will say to the module, hey, prepare yourself, we're gonna launch an adapt data model. It will be called, it will call the before adapt data model. Just to tell the module, if you need to do something before adapt data model, this is a good time. And also, after the adapt data model is finished, so meaning that the table is created, it will also call the module and tell it, look, we have finished the adapt data model. Do you want to do something? So in both cases, the module will be called before and after. So what do I do in the before? In the before, I want to capture the version. There's an object called fuck version. Get db version for module. You know, I'm gonna go and copy this from somewhere. I like to copy. I don't try to write things from scratch every time. I'm gonna copy it from this object. Okay, before before here. Oh no, obviously not. It's in the module. I was looking at the entity. Okay, so here I capture the name. What am I doing here? In this line, fuck version is also an entity. It's an entity like the others, and it stores in the database the current version of every module. So I'm before we do adapt data model, I'm reading from this fuck version, from the table, I am getting the line, get db version for module, my module name, which is employee. I have a module name employee. I'm reading the line in the database. Let us see it in the database. In the database, I have an F version here. F version, oh, it's an F here. Here it is. Data, where's the data? Here it is. The employee, you see, this is the employee module. It has an ID 1001. Okay. I'm gonna read this. It will give me the line, the whole line. And I'm saying if the module didn't exist, so the line is null. It should be different than null. If it is null, or if it's not null, I'm gonna make sure that if the ID is less than version ID, I have a constant here. What was it? It doesn't have ID. But let me add ID here. So what I'm saying is, if this line didn't exist at all, so if the DB version is null, so there is no line in the table for the module employee, this means that the table role does not exist. It's the first installation. And yes, I want to do the autocomplete, the auto-populate. So if it's null, I want to do the auto-populate. Or if it's not null, if the ID is less than the 1002. Okay, in these two cases, yes, I want to do the auto-populate. So I'm gonna have here a boolean saying auto-populate the employee role. By default, it's false, and it will be filled by true here. Okay, why am I just writing the boolean? Because I cannot fill it here. I cannot start doing insert because the table does not exist yet. Okay, and if I check, so when will it exist? In the after adapt data model, it will be here. I can do the insert, but if here I check, I do this check here in the after adapt data model, it will be too late because the line in the DB version would have been upgraded already. So I have to check for the boolean in the before adapt data model, and in the after adapt data model, I see if really the flag was true. So I can do the auto-populate. Okay, is it clear why I have to do this in two different places? In this place, the version is still in the old value, in the initial database value. The adapt data model is not done. So I read the value, and should it be less than my threshold for employee role auto-populate, then what I can do is really activate the boolean and say, yes, I'm gonna do the auto-populate. When am I gonna really execute the auto-populate? After the adapt data model, because I need the table. I want to fill the table. So the table, in between these two events, the table would have been created, and I'll be able to insert the lines that I want, the default lines in employee role. How do I insert them? How do I insert them? Let us think logically. This is something related to the metadata of the object. It's related to the table. So when I say table, I say foc desk, sorry, not the foc object. So I'm gonna go to the foc desk of the employee role. I'm gonna look here. I have created a foc employee role desk. I don't have to do that for every foc object, but in this case, I have a class foc role desk. I can get it in two different ways, either like this, or the new way that I prefer is to go to the entity and statically call the get foc desk. My entity is the employee. Dot get foc desk. I get what? A foc desk. Okay. this would have done the same. This would give me the same result. Okay, so anyway, I have this desk now. Once I have this desk, well, better to cast it because I know that this desk is an employee desk. It's not just any FOC desk. So I'm gonna cast it to employee role desk. Yeah, true, it's not employee, it's employee role. Okay. So, employee role, I'm getting the FOC desk of the employee role. I get an employee role desk. This desk has a method, and we'll go and see it now, called autopopulate or execute. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. In this employee role desk, I have, we're not going to go through the different methods of the desk. Anyway, it's not a big one. Anyway, the particular thing about this FOC desk is that it implements autopopulatable, meaning that this table, this FOC desk, has the ability to autopopulate itself. Okay, we will see how this is used in FOC. This automatically allows FOC to put it in a menu in the administrator, and actually, if I want, I don't have to do all this blah blah here. I don't have to do this. Let me see, the server is still running. No, it's not. Okay. I'll show you the other option, but let us continue like this. There are two options. There are a way of saying, I don't want to write the code to autopopulate here, to trigger the autopopulation here. I want the autopopulation to be done through a click in the menu of the administrator. And in this case, I don't have to write these. I would be able to remove these and live my life normally. But then manually, I will go and click autopopulate. Okay. Yeah, I usually choose to put it directly in the adapt data model. This way, there's no human intervention for the installation, and all the necessary scripts, I may say, are launched. Okay, so let us get back to this FOC desk and see what autopopulatable means. Autopopulatable is an interface. It has a method populate. So this is the real execution of the autopopulate. And this just gives us a title that will be used in a menu. Get autopopulatable title. Okay. My autopopulatable title is employee role. Okay. And my populate is here. Now here we will take advantage of this case to understand how FOC works, okay, and how we scan, if I may say, the different, how we scan the memory and fill it. Okay, let's see this, how it's done. When populate is called, it's called when I click in the menu. And also it will be called automatically here. Okay, so to finish this chapter in the FOC, in the employee module, we agree that what I said here is, hey guys, before the adapt data model, tell me what version you are really. The database will tell me, oh, I'm in version 800. Oh, if you are 800 less than 1002, this means I need to do the autopopulate of the employee role. So autopopulate of employee role will become true. And after adapt data model, once the table is created for the employee role, now I can really execute it. So I'm checking the Boolean. If autopopulate employee role is true, then give me the FOC desk. There is one singleton for every table in the database. So employee role has only one FOC desk in the memory. I'm getting this desk and I'm saying populate has a memory method called populate. Now from now on, let's forget about the module. It's managing itself. It's great. remove the useless imports, Control Shift O, and let me go to populate. In populate, what's happening? Populate, first I want to get the list of, I'm going to write this again here, but while writing it, it'll be clearer. I want to get the list that we have currently for the employee role. We agree that it should be empty. But this method that I'm writing here is a safe method to launch anytime. So maybe it's not empty and I need to add new values. I can launch it anyway. So I'm going to treat it as if I'm calling it, and it might not be empty. So a list of items, entities, is a FOC list. We have a FOC object. Once they are in a list, FOC objects in a list, the list is called, it's of type FOC list. So this list, I'm going to get it from where? I'm going to get the static cached list of the employee role. If I have one list in the memory for this employee role, where do you think is a good place to get it? And from the FOC desk, which is the metadata of this employee role. I am in the FOC desk. I am in the instance of the FOC. So I say get FOC list, and I'm going to get the FOC desk now. Okay. Now I can do it like this. I say get FOC list, and then here I can say load if not loaded from DB. Why am I saying this? Because this is a cached list. When I say get FOC list from the FOC desk, don't be afraid to hit F3 and see what it does. I'm going in the FOC desk low level object, and here it's picking it from the data store. Okay. If it's null, it's going to create it. Otherwise, it's going to return it directly. So it creates it only once. It creates it and puts it in the data store. So this is typically what you do when you have a cache in memory. It's not an invention. You start by getting it from the data store, from your cache. It's there very well, I have it. It's not there, I create it and I put it in the store for the next time. Okay. Normal hash map style cache. So once I did that, if it's the first time I get the list, it's created and put in the cache. Maybe no one loaded it yet. I want to load it. So I call a method that says load if not loaded from DB. So it's only conditional load, not a force load, because I have another option. I can say force, I can say reload from DB. This way I'm forcing the reload. And to tell you the truth, I should be doing the force reload. In this case, I should be doing the force reload, because if I'm calling this method in the middle of the life of the server and everything, I want to make sure that I have exactly what's in the database. Because if someone inserted something in the database, I want to know of it now, because I'm going to do a procedure that inserts values. So I'm going to do a reload, not load if not loaded. And this is what was said here in this line I'm trying to replace. It was saying force reload. It was not saying load if needed. So the same thing as I'm doing here in the method, I could have done it by passing a parameter here saying FOC list dot force reload or load if needed, or nothing, don't load at all, just bring me the instance force reload, because we are going to insert items and I want to make sure that I have the laces from the database before I start messing around with new records. So okay, now I have the list, I'm happy. Now I want to, for every item, somebody sent me by email and told me, look, we need to have these options. Engineer, okay, support, technical support, okay, sales executive, and financial officer. These are the roles in my company. And I decided to have, so for every role title, I will have a sort of a constant that goes with it, something hidden that will be used in the database if I need anything. Engineer is in type engineer. This is a string. You remember that I have created these constants here in the employee role. Type engineer, support, sales, financial officers, and I have said in the multiple choice string field that these are the values that are possible, and I can type new values. Okay, fine, very good. Let me go back to my employee role desk. So let us see, this method is here. Add lookup if not exist. I passed with the list, the name, title actually that I want to see, the name, and the type, the sort of the constant. What are we doing here? I'm going to the list. If the list is always be careful to do your conditions null, not null, to make sure that you don't fall into null pointer exceptions. So if list is different than null, I come here and I say find lookup. This is another method. Find lookup by type. So I'm looking for the type. If it's there, I don't add anything. If it's not there, so I'm checking if I find the object employee role, it will not be null. I will not do anything. If it is null, then I say to the list a new empty item. This is the way to add an item to the list. I say new empty item, so the list will add to it an item and will do any binding that needs to be done with the list. So it's sort of it also tells the list that you have a new child. And then I say to the object set name, this is the name, set type, and then I say validate true. The validate true is an equivalent to clicking save if I was in a form and filling the form, and then I say save. Validating true, I'm saying to the memory object that if you are a new object created, you can get inserted if you want. So I'm like committing to the database. Okay, I filled my memory stuff, and then at the end I say validate. Validate is also to say save. Okay, now sometimes you say validate, it doesn't get saved. Why? Because the manager of these objects is the list. It depends how you define your object. So we need to be careful with this also. Sometimes you really want the list to be the manager of the objects inserted and not the objects themselves. I can give you an example. If you are inserting a new invoice in a list of invoices, I want the list to be the master, to be the decision maker of when it is inserted, because really every object, every invoice by itself is a big thing and independent, and this is the transactional big object. Okay, now if I'm inside the list, and in the list I'm inside the invoice. In the invoice I have a list of products, an invoice. In the invoice I have a list of products that I have purchased. So in this list of products, it is also a list. If you click validate on one line in the list of products, I don't want to save anything. I save the whole invoice. I don't save the line of the product inside the list. The one who decides if we save now or not, okay, is the invoice. It's not the invoice item inside the list, inside the invoice. You agree on this, that sometimes this is the behavior that you want. So just saying that anyway, it's important to say validate, because this informs the list that I'm done and I'm okay with my object, and it can be saved if you want. The list itself, I'm calling the validate of the list at the end of all my add. I'm calling the list validate too. Okay. So there's only one method that we didn't see, is the find lookup. In the find lookup, we are also getting the list. The list is not null. There is a method to search the list by property string value. I indicate the name of the field and the value. Inside there is a for loop that will compare and will bring the value if found. If not found, it will be null. So notice something. Here I had the list with me. Apparently, I wasn't lazy. I passed it to these methods. I wasn't lazy. I passed it to the methods and I am using it. But then I didn't pass it to the find lookup. For a business reason, I didn't pass it because I needed it, not because I needed to be without a list. But then I'm doing a get fork list again here. But you agree that this get fork list will bring the same instance as the one that I have here, because this list will be in this data store. It will be fetched from the data store because it's cached. Okay, so I didn't need to pass it here. I could have done this also. I'm going to do it just for the sake of the example. I don't really have to pass the list. Okay. Then you will tell me, okay, you don't want to pass the list. Why did you get it here? Why did you say get list? Just to say validate? You can say validate down here. I can do it like this. This is for the validate. But no, I want to force the reload. This is why I got it here in the first place. Because I want to bring the list, I want to force the reload to make sure that I have in memory the latest thing that is in the database. And then I'm ready to go through the check of each option, see if it's available or not, and to insert. Okay, we are done with this. Let me now run it, because now we have something that should auto-populate. In our convention, please always use the top to put variables, never put key parameters, attributes in the middle of the code. Okay, so now it's gonna upgrade to 1002, and now you saw me, I deleted the employee role. Let me see what will happen when I run. I know what will happen. There's no bug. I know what will happen. There's a bug. I'm never sure. Okay, I'm running the server. First thing is that the system will detect that there's a difference between the versions in the modules. And okay, apparently there's I'm getting this error for not important. Look here. Look at these inserts and look at the alter table here. Not alter table, create table this time. Okay, create table. I'm creating the table employee role. Why? Because the system knows, it detected. Look what the sequence was. The software started, server started. Automatically, it starts by comparing the version ID in memory that the executable is saying 1002. For the module employee, the level is, the version ID is 1002. This is what the executable is saying. Fuck will automatically go and compare with the this one, this table. I will refresh it now. See, it was 1001 previously. You see it? I'm gonna refresh. The refresh or what? Where is the F version? Oh, it's 1002 now. So it detected the 1001. It says, oh, there's a difference. There is an upgrade that needs to be done. And Fog automatically triggered the adapt data model. Okay. Adapt data model is triggered. Once it got triggered, it detected that it needs to do, from this logic that we implemented together, it needs to do the auto-populate at the end. So at the end, it did the auto-populate. But during that time, since the table does not exist, so the comparison between what the tables and the fields that are in the database with the tables and the fields expected by executable allowed to say that, hey, we need to create table employee role, and these are the fields. The fields are the name, 100 character. The deprecated is a boolean. I use integer instead of boolean. Okay. The order field is an integer, and the type is a character, 30 characters. Okay, with the primary key, we always call it ref. Automatically, the primary key, you don't have to specify it, it is there, mandatory. Okay, so the table is created, and then a bit later, it went through the insert of every employee, every level, engineer, technical, sales, financial officer. Okay, so this is what we have. Let me check it in the database now. Let me check it inside. I'm going to the menu. I'm going to, in the menu, I have nothing to say. I have no way of seeing the employees. I didn't add a menu item. We will do that immediately. Okay? We will do that immediately. Let me go to the employee module. Look here, I have employee list. The same way, I will have another module. Look at this method. I didn't explain that. Look at this method. This method and the module will be called automatically by Fog whenever it's building the menu tree, this menu tree. So whenever it needs to build this menu tree, it will call us. It will tell us, do you have any menu items to add? It will call us if we have the rights. If the user has the right to this menu, he will be called. If he doesn't have the right, he will not be called. So if we are here in the code, this means that the user has access to the employee module. Great. First thing that we said is employee tree. I have this object. It's an employee v Okvaden menu tree. We have pushed a menu called employee management, and then we pushed another menu for the employee list. And now I'm pushing a menu for employee role list. We always have a sort of a constant here. I'm going to type it directly as a string to identify the menus independently. And then here I have a title, employee role. Okay, I'm going to stop the server. I have an employee role, and the only thing that I have to specify is the list that needs to be displayed. Why? Because Fog will guess what's the GUI that goes with it. Okay, so I'm saying employee role, get Fog desk. Here, what do I have? I have a Fog desk. Once I have the Fog desk, the metadata, I'm saying get Fog list. I'm getting the same static list that I was getting in the auto-populate. I go to the Fog desk and I tell the Fog desk, give me the list of your items. So if it's loaded, it's loaded. If it's not, it's gonna get loaded. I'm gonna say load if needed. If it's the first time in your life, load the list. If it's not the first time, it would be there, and great. Just give it to me directly. It's in the cache, in the hash map. So this method is a callback to this menu, and it knows how to fetch the right table for the GUI. Let me leave this to a little bit afterwards. Let us just see I wonder why we have some errors here. Apparently, I should have got the logo and everything. Check this later. Employee role, voila. You see, I got the menu here. Employee role. This is the one I just added. If I click on it, I get the table employee role. It's directly editable in here. Okay. Now the role is not editable because I know why. I'll tell you why now. This is the type, the one that you know, I have a drop down, but I can type anything new if I want. Okay, so let's keep support for the moment. And nothing is deprecated, and the order is displayed here 1, 2, 3. I don't have to display the order. I can also use the drag and drop technical. Let's say we want to be start by sales engineer, then financial engineer, then technical, then engineer. Save. It's not sorting it right from the beginning. I need to check that. We need to check a few things. We also have these errors around that. We also have these errors here. We need to check that. Let us continue this session. Now that I will continue this session by hooking. I will interrupt the session now and continue in the following session. We will see how to put the role inside the employee and to fix some of these problems to see them working. Okay. Yalla. So thank you. See you in the next session.